Healing is not forgetting in grief. I know that it can feel this way, and lest you think this doesn't apply to you, let me ask you if you've experienced any of this, because I know that I have as a widow. Have you ever felt guilty for the lighter days, or for feeling joy again, or laughing, being concerned about what other people think of you, that maybe they think you've moved on, or there's a fear that the world perceives you as doing better? And deep down, you don't want to minimize anything. It's as though the loss of our late husband has something on the scales. And if we're not looking really sad and crying and grieving, and you're seeing joyful outcomes or living life on the outside, then it somehow outweighs our grief and minimizes our person and our loss, none of which is true. But we're very afraid of minimizing our late husband's worth, value, or what he meant to us. And it's really important to us that the world understands that. We don't want him dishonored or forgotten, and we definitely don't want to shrink the love that we shared with them. The problem with this is this way of viewing grief keeps us stuck. This way of viewing it in scales and having this perspective. It's a fear of, again, tipping these scales and experiencing too much goodness or showing it in our life. Or the idea that life being good now takes away from, again, outweighs the life that was good with him before. Or we feel that if we're not in a broken, sad grief place, then we're not missing him, or that he didn't mean very much to us, or even actually that we're not still grieving, which we are. This fear and this pain can keep us connected to them. But we don't want our relationship with our late husband, and we don't want our widowhood grief journey to be through the relationship of pain. That is what keeps us stuck in darkness and in suffering. But it doesn't have to be that way. Sister, here is what is true. There is no such thing as these scales. The inherent worth and value and meaning of things in life can't be held on scales, and the goodness and joy and pain in life can't be contained on this idea of them. Different life seasons don't oppose each other. We can't hold the joys before and the new beginnings now without them taking from the other if we view it in this way. And it's a very incongruent and not genuine way of living, because we do hold space for both. Widowhood grief is full of the and, not the buts, but the ands. It's this and that, not an exception, but both together. And there isn't a comparison between people, especially if we have a new love in our life, and there isn't things that can outweigh or take away from our late husband, the love we had with them before or that we shared. Also, our grief isn't easily defined by outward behaviors. I mean, we know that we can be experiencing grief that others don't see and they don't know, and that grief has a lot of ups and downs, and no one on the outside could tally or weigh that. It couldn't be documented. And one of the areas of growth in grief is actually not having the focus on everyone else's opinion of your grief journey. They don't know and they can't understand. And their corrections of our grief or their agendas are not going to be helpful. So the sooner we can let those things go, the better it will be for us in our healing journey as widows. So healing is not minimizing. It is taking them and all of the goodness that we have with them, and it is bringing it forward with us into our new life and our new chapters that we are still living. We're remembering them with love instead of with pain, which is so critical to our healing. We don't want pain anchoring and characterizing our relationship with them, with their memories, and with our widowhood in general. We want love to do that, our love for them, and also the love that we receive from them as they are now in their perfected form. They're no longer tied to sinfulness and dealing with the shroud over their eyes and the chains and struggles that they may have had before. They love in a perfect way now, and we can receive that from them. And when we heal and grow and hope and we keep living to glorify God, we are loving them. And most importantly, we are loving God. So what does that look like in action? Let's talk about 3 tangible steps. So the first one is focus on love in your grieving, in your remembering, and in your healing. Let me remind you what love looks like as defined from the Lord in 1 Corinthians 13. This is the love that they have toward you, sister, as you live forward as their widow. It says love is patient and love is kind. It does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It doesn't rejoice with wrongdoing, but it rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, and love never ends. So this definition of love, these are the things we want to focus our personal relationship with our late husband to. And where that may have been hard, that is where we want to do it with who they are now in heaven in their perfected form. Again, if there was brokenness, sinfulness, and things that were really hurtful or harmful to you, we can still make this connection with them now in a really healing way. Also, it's how we want to receive from them, right? This is what their disposition is toward us. Again, no matter how things ended with them when they passed away. We're focusing on love. Sister, let love be your anchor. So that focus on love is number 1. Number 2 is recognizing the earthly boundaries of marriage. And I know this is a touchy subject. I am not saying that you have to be in another romantic relationship, but oftentimes we are stuck in this idea of something that is not biblically true. 1 Corinthians 13 says love never ends, right? We just talked about that. Our love with them and for them, their love for us, it doesn't end. But marriage, however, is an earthly reflection of a heavenly reality. But there isn't going to be marriage in heaven. The word says that. In Matthew 22, the Sadducees approached Jesus and were trying to trap him. But the scenario that they made up was related to a widow who in those times would be married to the living brother of their late husband. And so they make up this scenario to Jesus and they say, what if she was married and then passed on, but he dies and passed on and passed on. So this woman has had 7 earthly husbands, and they ask Jesus, whose wife will she be in the end then at the resurrection after this earthly life here? And Jesus replied to them in verse 30, he said, at the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. In addition, in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 7:39 says, a woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she's free to marry anyone she wishes, but he must belong to the Lord, again, encouraging us in marrying a believer. So although it may be difficult to understand and grasp, our earthly marriage with our husband has ended. And it's not a have to as far as being in another relationship. If you choose to hold that love in your heart and live the rest of your life apart from remarrying, that's a beautiful love story, and that's okay. So it's not a have to, but it's a you are free to. We find in the Spirit freedom, and this freedom to remarry doesn't take away from love. See, when I chose Andre, my first husband, and was married to him until death did us part, I fulfilled my vows till death do us part. And now I've chosen my second husband, Mike. So this idea that can float around widowhood, again, based in fear and can bring up anxiety about comparing them, needs to be put away because it's irrelevant. We don't choose between them, and we don't get to choose between them. There's no scales, remember? Love is valid in both marriages. I chose Andre, loved him and love him, and I choose Mike and love him within the earthly definition of marriage now. So that's number 2, understanding what earthly marriage is. Love is enduring, what that means, and the freedom that it gives us going forward, and not being tied to things that are no longer in existence that can hinder us and cause pain, guilt, and shame when we want to move forward. And number 3, how do we do this, is living forward with safety, honesty and love, which glorifies God. So when we are moving forward in widowhood grief, we really need to have safe places to carry this out, because although we don't want everyone else's opinions to shape us here, it can impact us. Their judgments and their agendas can be extremely difficult, especially when it's the people who support you or your own family. Finding safe places to grieve is really, really important. And safe grief places hold two things: both empathetic grief companions, people who can sit with you and witness your pain, where you can be authentic, genuine, and emotionally honest about what you're going through. You can be raw and real about the hard, and you're not going to get shamed. You're going to find people who get it, and it's going to be a safe place to process that, where people aren't going to try to fix you, because grief just needs to be witnessed. And in addition to that, we need grief places that are also filled with hope and forward movement and healing, because we can find grief places where people commiserate and circle the drain of life being over, and I will always be broken, and I died when he died, and this will never heal, and I will never get better, and life will never be good again. And that is not healthy grief. So being able to be real and safe and find companions needs to be coupled also with hope, with living forward, because we have not died. It feels like a part of us died because part of our life is gone, and that's very valid, but we are not dead yet, and our story is not over, and the Lord doesn't want us to continually be wrapped in grave clothes. He wants us to run free, just like he called Lazarus out of the tomb and said, "Remove the grave clothes from him," and called him to keep living. We need a place that we can both be honest and safe, and also with people who are going to encourage us in healing and rebuilding, and not just staying stuck in darkness and in having these relationships to pain only in our grief. So we can be honest, we can have safety, but we do it with forward movement in hope in grief. Those kinds of places are what help us to experience things like post-traumatic growth, and the places where we allow the Lord to be glorified even through the suffering, trusting that there is purpose through the pain, and that there is a lot more to this story. And we choose to participate in that with the Lord. Sister, I hope that this has blessed you today. Your healing is not forgetting. There is so much love and goodness ahead here. And if this has resonated with you, I would love to invite you into what I offer. I come alongside widows one-to-one to coach them toward grieving with hope, healing deeper, and rebuilding redemptively, wanting to glorify Jesus and do all of this in an authentic way, not having to do it alone. And I also have a beautiful Christian widow community called the Hope Stronghold, where you can have other widows living widowhood together, praying together. And so you can know that you are not alone, and have spaces that you can be real and you can move forward in hope. I would love to connect with you. Feel free to email me at connect@hopespeaker.com. You are so loved. I hope to talk with you soon. Bye for now.